Right again. It wants mending. Does nobody live there? Not any more. You disappointed in the sight of your first castle? It isn't me first castle, Dar. There's a castle back in Newcastle. A fine one. Yes, you're right. Peter Greenbank cuffed his son's head again. This time, the boy grabbed at his hat with both hands, and once more they were laughing together. Well, come on, said his father. It's evident you're not impressed. We'll have to see what you think of the smelting mills. That's where you said you used to work, Dar. Aye, that's where I used to work. Peter Greenbank nodded his head, and kept it nodding for the next 10 paces, the while his mind went back to his days in the smelting mill. He had gone there when he was 16, after he had left the coal mine up on the hill, and it had been a case of from bad to worse. They'd lived in Allendale at the time, and he had walked the 4 miles every morning, hail, snow or blow, and dragged himself back the 4 miles every night. For 6 days a week, all he had seemed to do was work, eat and sleep. He hadn't at that age drunk heavily like the other workers, many of whom had further to walk, some living as far away as Hexham, but some of them never reaching home, because there was an inn that acted as a halfway house, and a load of beer on top of their physical weariness would cut off their legs, and so they would sleep where they fell, perhaps in a barn, until the next day. But he hadn't as far to walk as had his father, because he worked in the mines up towards Allen Heads. At least he did until the day they carried him in his box to the cemetery, another victim of the lead. It was after his father died that his mother moved them near to Catton. This still left him 2 miles to walk, but that seemed nothing. Yet he had never been settled in himself after his father went, and he had become obsessed with an unusual craving. He wanted to go to sea, but he knew he couldn't do this, because he was his mother's only support. When he confided this niggling desire to Mr. Makepeace, who was their nearest neighbour, the old man had said, "They must be mad, lad. You might think the lead in the coal mines and the smelting mills bad, but the work in them is child's play. Aye, child's play compared with what you have to go through afore the mast." And he was speaking from experience, he'd said, for he had been at sea for 10 years when he was young. It had never been known for any man in his own family to take to the sea. His grandfather had often talked to him, not only of his own father, but of his grandfather too. They'd all been bred on the land and died on the land, first as farm workers on the big estates, then, wanting a more independent life, but not an easier one, they took to the mines. So he did not know from where it came, this craving within himself for the sea. But not many days after his mother died, he packed his bundle and gave what pieces there were in the house to Kate Makepeace, who was by this time widowed, and the rest to Bill Lee, who'd just got married and had a 1-room shanty round the other side of the quarry from Kate. Then he had made his way to Newcastle, thinking that all he had to do was to go to a shipping office and sign on. That was the procedure, so he understood. However, it was 9 months later before he got his first trip on a merchant boat, for although he wanted the sea, he didn't want to join the Navy after having listened to what happened to press-ganged men, by which time he had married the daughter of the little house in which he was lodging. Now more than 8 years had passed, and during this time he had been only 3 times ashore in this country, when the time between trips had on 2 occasions been but a matter of days, not weeks, and a man who's been without a woman for years at a stretch does not waste time in longing to tramp the fells of his childhood. So this was the first time he'd been this far since the day he left the place. But this trip was different. By God, yes, it was different. "Da!" His thinking was brought back to the present, and he looked down on the reason for his return, and absent-mindedly he said, "Aye." "How far is it to the old woman's house?" "You mustn't call her the old woman. Her name is Mrs. Makepeace." "But you call her old Kate?" "What I can do and you can do are 2 different things. Now, you ask how far it is?"